Good morning and welcome back to the League Winners Fantasy Show. I'm your host, as always, Dalton Salings, and today we will be closing out the positional breakdowns with the tight ends. So we've got our tight ends today that'll close out our positional breakdowns, and then, like I said, we'll have a little bit of a break before another video comes out, so I'm very passionate about later on in the week. But for right now, we're going to dive into tight ends. There's not a lot of news to break right now. Camp is going to be fully underway for every team starting today, at least in some capacity, with rookies reporting or veterans reporting. So that's exciting. Keep an ear to the ground for news that is fantasy relevant. But without further ado, let's get into the tight ends. As always, we're going to start with number one. My number one tight end for this year is Trey McBride. I think he is going to get the most targets. I have weirdly more confidence in Trey McBride's quarterback situation than I do the number two tight end, who we'll get to in just a moment. But for me, I look at it as McBride is going to have a ton of targets. He's the wide receiver one for his team. I have him for 158 targets, 9 touchdowns, 118 catches, almost 1,200 yards. I'm all in on Trey McBride this season. He is in redraft leagues going as the quarterback one right now, or tight end one, excuse me. That's the appropriate spot for him. I think he's the best. I think he's the most upside. There's not too much I can say for him. I think he is number one. Similarly, the number two tight end, Brock Bowers, is going second in redraft leagues right now on Sleeper. I think that's fair. I think he's the second best tight end. I do have a decent chunk between these two players, about 50 fantasy points total between these two guys. So I am much more in on McBride than I am Bowers. But at tight end two, I think it's an appropriate price point for Brock Bowers. I do have more questions about his quarterback situation. I don't know if it's going to be Kirk Cousins. I don't know if Fernando Mendoza is going to prioritize getting the ball to Brock Bowers. That is kind of my biggest fear with him this year, is that he doesn't take another leap just because of the quarterback situation. We don't see a leap out of Brock Bowers this year, which I think does kind of limit his ceiling. Whereas with McBride, even though he has Jacoby Brissett and maybe Carson Beck, I do think there's not enough else going on in this offense that he's going to get the ball thrown his way quite a bit. I think he'll lead all tight ends in targets this year. Those are both right on ADP right there. My first differentiator from ADP is going to be the tight end three. It's, for me, Tucker Kraft. He goes off the board at tight end six, and a lot of that has to do with him being missing almost the entirety of last year with an injury. I expect him to come back healthy. I think he kind of just picks up where he left off. He started last year very hot before the injury. I think that's what he goes back to. I think we may see a little bit of a dip in targets early in the year, just in case of, we don't want to rush him back, but I do fully expect to see Tucker Kraft be a dominant force at tight end. I think tight end six is too far of a drop. If you want to say I don't see him, I project him close to a ceiling. I don't think he cracks into the top two, but if you say I don't see him as, top three tight end, you can see him as top five and still get him in good value as he is the tight end six off the board. So I do really like that value right now on Tucker Kraft in redraft. I think that's a great place to capitalize. If you don't get Trey McBride at the top, I'd almost rather wait and take Tucker Kraft rather than take Brock Bowers. Tight end four is the tight end four in drafts right now, and that's going to be Tyler Warren. Last year, rookie with the Colts. I think if Daniel Jones is back healthy, similar to like really everyone in the Colts offense, we saw him take a dip after Daniel Jones went down. Even if Daniel Jones isn't the same player, which I don't expect he will be, I think Tyler Warren will benefit from Jones being back healthy, throwing the football again. I do expect a big season out of Tyler Warren. I have him ahead of fellow second-year tight end Colston Loveland because I think there's less competition for targets with Michael Pittman out the door. I think the offenses are going to be similar in terms of points scored and things like that. So I do have Tyler Warren ahead of Colston Loveland. Speaking of Colston Loveland, he's my tight end five. He goes off his tight end three. A lot of people like him a lot. There's debates about, is it Roma Dunze? Is it Luther Burden, a wide receiver? Maybe the answer is just it's Colston Loveland at tight end. I just don't expect that to be the case. I love Ben Johnson. I think he gets everybody involved. I think Colston Loveland is a top five season for tight ends, but I don't think he's a top three guy, which is where he's being priced. I have been priced out of Colston Loveland quite a bit this year, so that is kind of my thing. Is I'm not going to pay up top three price for a guy who I see is likely finishing at fourth or fifth when I can get a guy later that I see as a top three finisher. So for me, that's kind of my reasoning for being slightly more out, not on the talent of Colston Loveland, but just on the price of Colston Loveland. At tight end six, I have the tight end five in drafts. I understand how confusing that sounds. I mean, I'm confusing myself just saying it, but I have Harold Fannin. He had a big year last year. David Njoku's out the door, so he should be in for an even bigger year. All those arguments make sense. I don't mind the draft price at all. Like I said, Tucker Kraft being right behind him is a little too enticing for me to pass up, but I do enjoy Harold Fannin this year. I think he is a good player with a good price point, and I expect to see a lot of targets go his way, especially if Deshaun Watson was the starting job and is a competent quarterback. I think that helps Harold Fannin quite a bit. My tight end seven is going as a tight end 11 in drafts. That's George Kittle. George Kittle is on the pup. He is opening training camp on the pup, but that was expected. The thought is he'll be off pup before the roster cut downs, which will allow him to be available week one. I'm not concerned at the moment about his progress. This is right on pace with where they expected him to be. So for me, George Kittle's being priced for an injury that we don't necessarily think is going to actually be hindering him. Because of that, I like him at the tight end 11. I think that's a steal at draft price. Now, of course, there are the questions of can he stay healthy all year? That's really been my biggest limiting factor with drafting George Kittle. I don't have an overabundance of shares with Kittle because I am a little nervous about what the injury could potentially look like as the season goes along. But at tight end 11, it's a very fair price. And the tight end 12 off the board is my tight end 8. That's going to be Jake Ferguson of Dallas. I've talked about how excited I am for this Dallas offense. I think Ferguson gets a lot of work in that. I have him for 70 catches, 620 yards, 7 touchdowns. I'm just behind Kittle, a safer pick in my opinion than George Kittle. Not the same upside. I think George Kittle has top 5 tight end upside still. Jake Ferguson doesn't have that, but he is a safer play. You know he's going to get work. There's not as much injury risk with Jake Ferguson. So I am a little bit more in on Jake Ferguson. I have a few more shares of Jake Ferguson despite me ranking him behind George Kittle. I do feel a little more comfortable drafting Jake Ferguson this season. Moving on to my tight end 9, who's being drafted as a tight end 8, it's Sam Laporta. A lot of people are very high on Sam Laporta this year. I've seen people ranking him in the top 3. If you're high on him, it's great value to get him at the tight end 7. I just don't have the same ceiling. Excuse me, the tight end 8, but I just don't have him at the same ceiling. I mean, it's a good offense, and I'm in on Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I am slightly worried about. We just didn't see him take the step forward I would have liked last year. Without Ben Johnson there, I hope to see more out of like Sam Laporta. We didn't see it. My worry is he's maybe not going to be the dominant tight end that we thought he could after his first couple seasons. Because of that, I am a little bit lower on him. Not a ton lower. Like I said, I'm one spot of ADP off. But there's guys behind him I like just as much, if not more. That's limited my exposure to Sam Laporta this year. Um, we'll talk about my tight end 10, which is the Chiefs' name discount weirdly applying now. It's Travis Kelce. He's being drafted as a tight end 14. I have him as a tight end 10. I'm all over the board on tight ends. If you've let's watch the previous positional breakdowns you've seen, I've been pretty close to ADP with some fluctuation, but no more than 1 or 2 players from outside the top 12 jumping in. Tight ends is different. I'm all over the place on the tight ends against ADP, and that is part of why if I don't get Trey McBride, I am kind of punting the position because I think I can pick out the guys later on that I like. Kelce's one of those guys. I mean, I think he's in a good offense. I think the offense takes a step forward. I was in on Rashee Rice yesterday. I'm in on Travis Kelce today. I have him as a tight end 10, so not back to his peak or anything like that. But I think there's a world where he is, a top 10 tight end. I think that's a likely world. I think that's a strong chance he ends up there. And because of that, I'm projecting him highly. I like him this season. I like the situation. I think his target share is still high and I think he can get a few touchdowns. And if he gets, I have projected for 5 touchdowns. If he gets 6, 7, 8 touchdowns, I think he's a top 5 or 6 tight end this year. And because of that, I think that's a safe shot at the tight end 14 to take. I don't mind walking out with Travis Kelce as my starting tight end this year in drafts because I think the upside is there, and it means I've strengthened quite a few other positions. My tight end 11 is the tight end 15. We're going to keep talking about discounts. That's Dallas Goedert. Goedert, I'm in on this year. I talk about Philly's offense and my concern about what will the receivers do without AJ Brown. Will it be a more rushing attack? I think it will be, but I think Goddard is a big beneficiary of Brown being gone. You can listen to me and Aiden talk about it in the NFC East breakdown video, but I do like Dallas Goddard quite a bit. I'm in on him this year. I'm excited for what he could potentially provide. His upside, I believe, is higher than it's been in the past few years, and I think this is a fair price for him going as the tight end 15 right now in drafts, getting him as a tight end 11. Another guy I'm comfortable with being my tight end 1 leaving drafts. He's going as a tight end 15. I don't mind him being my first tight end taken in the slightest. To close out my top 12, I have Dalton Schultz. He goes at tight end 18, so even further back. This is the first guy in my top 12. And really going down, I wouldn't really feel comfortable with any of these guys being my tight end 1. So I want one of my top 11 tight ends. Dalton Schultz is a perfect tight end 2 in my opinion. I am a little nervous because I do have a lot of stake in, okay, is CJ Stroud taking the step? And then it does Dalton Schultz actually benefit from that? It's a better receiver room in Houston than we've seen in a few years. So my concern is that he maybe doesn't get the same targets that I'm projecting him to get. That's my worry with Dalton Schultz. But I do have him 6 spots ahead of ADP, and I'm more than happy to go a double up at tight end. If I go, Goddard at 15 and Schultz at 18, I'm over the moon with the way my teams look. And so that's something I'm going to be targeting come drafts. Really, before I dive into the guys that I missed out on the cut on with my rankings, I want to say tight end. My take right now is take McBride or Kraft or punt it and get a Kelce, Kittle, Schultz, Goddard, one of those guys. That's my plan right now. I'm not going to be drafting a lot of Loveland, Warren, Bowers, Fannin in redraft Laporta. In best ball, it's different, but in redraft, I'm not going to be drafting too much of those guys because I don't see the path to them being a top guy. And so I'd rather save and take more skill position players, maybe a quarterback, and then get my tight end later on in drafts. Guys that missed the cut, there are three guys that are ranked inside the top 12 by ADP that I have ranked outside the top 12. The first one at tight end 9, Rondé Gadsden of the Chargers. I have him at my tight end 13, so just missing the cut for me. I'm not drafting him because I do fear David Njoku. He was brought into the Chargers this year. I'm worried that Gadsden isn't going to get as much work as we would want him to be getting, and that there's going to be weeks where you're kicking yourself that you started Gadsden. I don't want to be in a position where my tight end's splitting work because I have to figure out, oh, do I play him? He's going to be sharing work. I want a tight end that's clearly planted as the tight end one on their team. Gadsden should be the one, but I just don't want to risk it with a guy that might be, supplanted at some point during the season, or I don't want a hot-handed tight end approach for my tight end one. That's kind of my reason for being a little bit out on Gadsden this year. Further down, the tight end 7 is Kyle Pitts. So Kyle Pitts, obviously the fantasy darling. A lot of people are really excited about Kyle Pitts this year. I talked about it with Drake London. The quarterback play is a huge question mark for me. I don't trust Tua in the slightest to get it to the tight ends. I know he did last year a little bit. We saw him feed Darren Waller. I don't trust Kyle Pitts with Tua at quarterback. It's looking like Tua is going to be the quarterback, and because of that, I have him for just 656 yards and 4 touchdowns. I don't see the big jump for Pitts. People are saying I am out on him. I'm letting my league mates take Kyle Pitts. He would have to slide quite a bit for me to even think about taking him. I'm firmly out on Kyle Pitts this year. And the other player is the tight end 10, who I have ranked at 18. That's Dalton Kincaid. So this is a weirder one because this is a guy I've drafted quite a bit in best ball. Once again, my worry is this the year that Kincaid firmly plants himself as the tight end one? Like I talked about Gadsden, there's still Dawson Knox there. They brought in DJ Moore. There's more mouths in this offense than there was last year. My worry is Kincaid doesn't take a step forward, but rather stays kind of stagnant, and that's not going to be what I want for my fantasy tight end. So my worry is that I'm going to have to try and pick weeks to play him. I'm going to be running a platoon tight end if I take Kincaid, and I'm going to pick the wrong weeks and get blown up on. That's why I have shares of Kincaid in best ball, but in redraft, I'm not trying to pick which weeks Kincaid's going to have a big game and which weeks Kincaid's going to be non-existent. I don't want a roller coaster ride at my tight end. I want consistent production. I don't believe I'm going to get that out of Dalton Kincaid this year. That's why I'm out on him. With that being said, that's my tight end rankings. Those are the three guys that missed the cut, plus my top 12. Very excited for this year in fantasy. Please feel free to leave any questions in the comments. Thank you very much for tuning in. And like I said, I'll be back later in the week with a little rant on something I'm very passionate about. Thank you.